Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 449, and my guest is Dr. Gerry Ebalaroza-Tunnell. Gerry is a native Hawaiian. Her work is rooted in the guiding principles of Aloha: ask, listen, observe, heart, adapt, integrating cultural knowledge and contemporary leadership strategies to support organizational and community development. She holds her doctorate from the California Institute of Integral Studies and Transformative Studies and Consciousness. She's the award-winning author of Let's Live Aloha, a children's book that introduces young readers to the values of empathy, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. And her mission is to provide a framework for cultivating meaningful connections and fostering a more compassionate world. She's also the host of the Evolution of Aloha podcast. I am hailing from my new digs. I spent the last 9 days moving little by little, and so the sound is probably a little bit different than what everybody's used to, but I will adapt and adjust, and took everything I had. I'm exhausted to to do this edits and get this out. I'm hoping right now. My goal is to have it out Thursday. We'll see what happens. I'm so tired, and I'm covered in bruises. Moving is not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that. Anyway, that being said, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests in the show. You can find Hey Human Podcast on all the podcasty places for the most part, including YouTube. And I'm on social media under Susan Ruthism, and my music is out there, and it's in all the musical places for the most part. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on Apple, iHeart, Spotify. You know the drill. And thank you for listening. Be well, be love, be aloha. Here we go. Dr. Gerry Ebalaroza-Tunnell, how are you today? Welcome to Hey Human.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
Absolutely. And you are currently hailing from my home state, so shout out to Washington State.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit cold today, but it's like it is the Pacific Northwest. But I noticed that on the trees, the buds are starting to come in. So springtime's almost here. I think we have another 3 weeks before we're officially in spring. So you can start to see that the tree is starting to turn right now. It's starting to change colors because of the buds are coming out. So yeah, it makes me excited. It makes me excited. Springtime always does something for me. It reminds me that, that change is happening, that there's rebirth, there's growth, there's transformation.
We need all those things.
We do. Yeah. We do, especially in today's world, right?
Yeah, I read somewhere once, and I think I've mentioned it a few times on this show, but that we think of winter as being the dead time, but in fact, under the snow, under the leaves, under all the mulchy horrousness of the earth, that it's teeming, it's alive, and it's gearing up, and that in fact winter is a very exciting, alive time that we don't think of it in that way.
Oh, it's like I living in, I was born and raised in Hawaii, so I never really experienced the different weather patterns, and all the different seasons. I love winter. I mean, I love all the seasons, and winter reminds me that it's a time for rest. It is time for us to prepare for what's to come. And so, so what's underneath that? It's so exciting to know that there's new growth coming.
Yeah, the kernels.
Yep.
Let's talk about childhood. Grew up in Hawaii. Let's talk about that. So you are indigenous to the land of Hawaii, right, to the islands.
Yes.
Tell me all about what that childhood was like.
The only thing that I can, comparing to when I left Hawaii and, moving here to the Pacific Northwest. So growing up in Hawaii, I didn't know what layering was, right? It's like, I didn't understand what a layer was. And so, it's like we were at the beach all the time. We were camping. We had either no clothes or just one layer of clothes. So it was a lot of fun. Fresh fruit was abundant. I grew up and we had mangoes and we had papayas, we had avocado, we had tangerines and lemons and limes. And it was just all around that when I moved to the continent, I was like, doesn't everybody have pineapples and papayas growing in their backyard? So it was really confusing for me. It was confusing for me when I didn't know how to layer up. And when the weather changed and everything, it was like, what's happening? The first time I saw, okay, so the first time I thought I saw snow, I was living in Oak Harbor, and the frost just came in, and everything was white. And I was outside. I went outside, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, look at that!" And I'm scraping the frost off the window of the car, and I was trying to make a snowball like I would see on the movies. And a friend of mine, she comes out and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look, it's snow." She's like, "That's frost. You can find that in your freezer."
That's hilarious.
So I had no idea about that. And I would be at the beach all the time. I love the ocean. I love just having my feet just in the sand or just going deep into the ocean. And here in the Pacific Northwest, the first time that I tried, I'm like, what is this? What are all of these things that's touching my leg? Right? It's like there's kelp everywhere, and
A lot of kelp.
you can't see the bottom, and the sand's not like, the sand that I grew up with. So, it was like growing up in Hawaii, I feel that it was such a blessing to have been born there. What an honor to be a child of the land. And, it's like understand what it means to be Hawaiian. Now that I live in the diaspora, right? It's like I live away from my home and I'm up here. It gets a little hard sometimes. I do have the privilege and the opportunity to go home a lot. Like last year, I went home 4 times, which was really great. And, every time, whenever I go back home to Hawaii and I book my ticket, I deliberately sit on the left-hand side of the plane when I'm heading to the island, and then I sit on the right-hand side of the plane when I'm leaving the island, because then I can see, right? I can watch as the islands are coming into view. And then when I'm leaving, I can see the islands just kind of disappear behind of me. It's amazing to be able to go back home, but I miss it. It's like being here, I hardly ever see people that look like me. I can't walk into the grocery store and just buy my food or hear my music or anything like that. But I do my best. I do my best to try to create Hawaii around me. And no matter how far away I'm from the island, I will always have the spirit of aloha with me, because that's what grounds me. But yeah, I don't know if you could see, but I have a humidifier here. And I have my heat on, probably like at 75 or 80. So in my office, it's Hawaii.
You mentioned Oak Harbor as well as Hawaii. So I'm wondering, are you from a military family?
My ex-husband was in the military.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we were stationed over in Oak Harbor. I actually was in the Navy as well, too. And so it's like I was in the Navy for 6.5 years. When I joined the Navy, it was back in the 80s. It was like back in 1988 is when I joined the Navy. And at that time, my ex-husband just got back from being gone for 6 months. And him and his friends were like sitting around and they're talking about where women belong. And I have 2 sons. I have 2 sons. My sons are grown now. But as they were talking about where women belong, I walked in and I was like, what are you all talking about? And this one guy, he says, there's only 2 places that a woman belongs. And I was like, you're about to tell me. So he did, right? He did. He said, on her back or in the kitchen is what he said. So I was like, oh my goodness. It hit me, but I didn't know what to do with that in the beginning. And then I looked over and I looked at my 2 boys, and they were probably about 3 and 4 years old. And I'm like, oh, I am not raising boys, I'm raising men. And if they are to grow up thinking this way about women, I am responsible to whoever they end up partnering up with. So I ended up joining the Navy 2 weeks later because I wanted them to know that a woman can do whatever she wants to do and she belongs wherever she feels like she belongs. And so, yeah, so I joined the Navy and stayed in the Navy for 6.5 years.
I appreciate your service. Tell me something, when we have the new administration, somebody like Pete Hegseth, who thinks that women shouldn't serve in the military. As someone with that experience as a woman in the military, how do you feel about that? And secondly, do you have memories of what it was like as a woman in going into the Navy and your fellow female compadres, how that all was, how your experience was?
Oh, yeah, it definitely was a challenge. It definitely was a challenge. I remember being treated as an object, right? Is that, it's like even when it came to men that were in command, they were in charge, things that they would say, the way that they would look at me, the unwarranted and the unwelcomed, just touches when you walk by and think, oh, it was just gross, right? It was just gross. Being in the Navy, it allowed me to really understand what it was like to be up against the patriarchy, be up against men who feel that they're always in power. So I needed to figure out, how do I stand on my own laurels? How do I stand in my strength? I'm very competitive. So when it came to any of our training, our PT, I would always try to be up against, a man. So it's like I would run right next to him and run faster. I would do more sit-ups. I would do more pull-ups. I would do whatever I needed to do, because I needed to, I not only prove to myself, but also for the next generation. And it's unfortunate. And I can't stand the fact that these words are even coming out of my mouth, that we have to work harder in order to prove ourselves, because I don't think we need to. So yeah, everything that is happening about how women shouldn't serve, fuck. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. Fuck is a perfect word. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I just feel that it's a bunch of bullshit.
To me, it just screams of a beta male.
Yep. I think there's a threat. That's why.
There is a threat.
If the male species were a little more confident in themselves, they would know who they are. And instead of trying to compete with a woman, is stand next to a woman. Know that we each have our strengths, and that we should see that and honor that in each other. And I don't know why there should be a competition on, feeling so threatened by another person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weakness.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely is.
Let's talk about your identity as somebody from Hawaii, as someone. You spoke a little bit about what it was like to have the abundance of the land all around you. But I'd like to dig in a little bit to the idea that the people of Hawaii are incredibly and fiercely protective of their environment and their land, understandably, because it is relatively unspoiled by the rest of the continental United States, because it is hard to get to and hard to get to long enough to mess it up. But it's not like the mainland doesn't try. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
To mess it up. They're certainly. Talk about your sense of self through the land. Aside from, yes, I can eat really healthily. And by the way, I used to hate papaya. And then I went to Hawaii and had a papaya from there fresh, and
It's different.
blew my mind. It was night and day. To me, papaya always tasted like feet. But in Hawaii, it's so good.
Yes. It's like, if you haven't experienced fresh fruit from the tree, it's like when somebody tells me they don't like certain things, I'm like, well, first of all, how long did it sit out before you even tried it?
Or did it get frozen and unfrozen?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How far did it travel to you?
Mm-hmm. How insecticide laden is it? Yeah.
Exactly. All of those things come into play. But my connection my connection to the land. So in Hawaii, the word Aina, a lot of time people hear the word Aina, and it was like at first it's like Aina means land, but it means more than that. It's actually the land which feeds. So we are of the Aina, and we are of the land. There's a reciprocal relationship between us and the land, especially the one that nurtures us. I am very connected to it. There's 3 principles that I live off of: Aloha Akua, Aloha Aina, and Aloha Kanaka. So Aloha Akua is the love and divine, the connection to the divine, the loving connection to the divine. And when we are in alignment with Akua, we understand Aloha Aina, the blessings that we have of all of this that is around us, the water, the food, the sky, everything is all around us. And when we are in connection with those 2, then we can Aloha Kanaka, loving connection to each other. Because we understand that, it's like for me to have fresh water is for you to have fresh water. I know what it does for me, which means that I should also ensure that you have it too. Unlike, in our society where, poisoning the water and the land is something that is like, people are okay with, not knowing that connection. I'm greatly connected to the land because I want that for the next generation. I know what it does for me. I know what it feels like to walk out and have fresh air, and to not have that. It's like is not in connection with the divine or with Kanaka. How can you love yourself and enjoy everything without ensuring that everybody should have the same thing too? That love and connection to Akua, to Aina, to Kanaka. That's my foundation, and that's how I'm so connected to it, because I understand what it means on a deeper level. Then it's not just where we wake up and this is where we are. This is the place that feeds us, that where we breathe, where we exist. So yeah, that's my connection.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you left?
I was young when I left. I left Hawaii when I was 17, but I'm home all the time. I go home all the time. Sometimes, just like with, last year, I was home a lot. My family were like, it's like you never left. I'm like, no matter how long I'm away from home, whenever I go back to Hawaii, the first thing I need to do is I need to get into the ocean. My body shakes where it's like, okay, it's time. I just have to go drop my things off and I have to get into the water. Even if it's at night, I just have to touch the water, right? There's just something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? In September, I had the opportunity to go and sit with one of our kupuna, one of our elders. And I was telling him about, this feeling that I have. I said, I can come home, every other month. And every time I come home, I just have to get into the water. I have to touch it. I have to see it. I have to smell it. I have to be in it. And, I said, I don't know what it is. And he was like, that's your makua hine. And I was like, it's my mother. He goes, you are coming back to your makua hine. You're coming back to the amniotic fluid of your mother. That is why you want to get into the water, because it is where you feel safe, where you feel like you belong, where you feel welcomed. And I'm like, yes, that's it. That's it. That unconditional love of being held in the water, in the ocean of Hawaii. So
having been away from Hawaii and then starting to develop your personhood as an adult, how did you decide to facilitate that connection into your life's work? What brought that about?
Oh, that's a good one. Cause, there's all different, chapters of my life and experiences that I had to go through in order to get to where I am today. And I always tell people, I said, okay, so what I'm saying right now may differ. So just know that I speak in draft. And it's because my experience and when deeper learning comes into play, then my thoughts, my perspectives, everything shifts. I said, so it's not inconsistency, it's evolution. So what I say now may change. When I first left Hawaii, I went from Hawaii to Los Angeles. Living in LA, it was the first time I was, 17 and never left Hawaii and decided to go to Los Angeles. And when I went there, everything was just so big, right? It's like I remember coming into LA and as we were landing, I was like, where do all these lights go? They just keep going and going and going, and it doesn't stop. And so the gentleman sitting next to me, he says, well, you can actually go across the United States. And to me, I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? He's like, you can drive across the United States. And I was like, this is amazing, right? And everything was so big and everything was so different. And it was the first time in my life that I was faced with the question of what are you in regards to what I look like. And I didn't understand that because in Hawaii, we never did talk about race. We talked about nationality. We talked about place. So, it's like I was young, I was working at Jack in a Box. A woman comes up and she orders in Spanish. And I tell her that, I don't speak Spanish. And she looks at me and she's like, what? And I'm like, I don't speak Spanish. And she's like, she talks to her friend and she's like, well, what do you think she is? As if I'm not there, right? What do you think she is? And I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, well, if you're not Mexican, she goes, you're definitely not white and you're not black. So what are you? And that was the first time that I was ever asked that question. And I was like, human. I'm human. And she's like, no, 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 no. What are you? Where are you from? And she was a little rude. And so I told her, I was like, well, I'm from Hawaii. And as soon as I told her I was from Hawaii, I noticed that there was this shift in her personality where she's like, oh my God, I love Hawaii. I owned a condo in Maui. And I was like, what is this? What just happened? Right. So that was my first experience with my identity on the way that I showed up in the world. And then when I moved from Los Angeles to Oak Harbor and I went into a military, everybody there was military. And so I met people from all over the world. And that's when I realized that, wow, Hawaii is so small and it's so contained. And the only information that we receive from what is happening out in the continent is what's coming over, the television, is that, the news. That's the only thing that I would understand. I didn't know what snow was. I didn't realize that there were so many Christmas trees around and, and all of these things. And so that kind of like shifted my identity of place, because then I started to meet other people from different areas across the world and started to learn about these different experiences. I was married for 18 years with my first marriage, ended up getting a divorce, and then finding myself alone. That's when I started to understand who am I? Because I went from my mom and dad to a husband, and then I had 2 children. I became a mother, and then I divorced, and then I found myself by myself. And then that's when a lot of, I feel, the deeper transformation came through, is when I started to figure out, like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a woman who served in the military, to be a woman of color, to be indigenous, to be a mother? And all of these different identities started to pop up, and I had to sit with it and look at it. I learned a lot during that time about who I was, how much fear I could endure, because I didn't know how to live on my own. and then also the excitement of living on my own. It's like I bought this fork with my own money.
That's a big deal, though, when you've always been under the care. Yeah.
Yes, and that's it, the care. I learned how to care for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like I also learned about being too confident as well, too. Confident became more cocky, and it's like I can do it. And it was all about this independence, this strong independence, where I forgot what it was like to be not codependent, but interdependent, how to exist with another human being on a level where we would inspire and encourage each other to be our better selves instead of, either caring for or taking in or whatever it is. And so, it's like a lot of things changed and shifted in the time when I was divorced and then remarried, and then here it's like 19 years later. So actually tomorrow will be 19 years that my husband and I have been married. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. So, and how that all played into the work that I do today. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, it's like, Dr. G, what's your career like? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's like my career is to share the spirit of aloha. And I realized that aloha is something that you share. It's something that shows the other person that you're in relationship with, that we bring the humanity out in each other. We bring the best out in each other.
Is it like namaste?
I don't know. Maybe I would say so.
Namaste meaning I honor your soul.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of times when people hear the word aloha, right? They're like, aloha means hello and it means goodbye. It just means a simple greeting. But if you look at aloha, aloha means love. It means compassion. It means grace. It means empathy. Now, if we look at aloha, alo is presence, forward facing front, and ha is the breath of life. And so when we engage in conversations with each other in the presence of one another, we are exchanging the breath of life. So it's like, I would say it would probably be similar to namaste. My ancestors knew the depth of what aloha meant. And when we never did write things down, right? We're orators, we're storytellers. That's how we share knowledge with each other. So until it became something that was written down, the interpretation probably changed. And I feel that aloha does mean that we are in the presence of another life. And so I would say that's what it is. Everything that I do is around aloha. And, it's like sometimes it's really hard to share that aloha in a world that doesn't know how to give aloha back. And, again, it's not something that I expect in return, but sometimes it would be nice to see that and to feel that.
There's a conflict of reciprocity. It is sometimes hard to maneuver in a world that feels like it could give up flying, about your existence, and at the same time trying to lead by example or lead with love. It's a complicated space to live in, and I don't know that any of us are able to maintain it all the time. Certainly we may try, some of us, not everyone, obviously, but and then the coupled with other human emotions, as you mentioned, ego or guilt or sacrifice or martyrdom, all these things that are woven into that presence.
And it's complicated. Sometimes I have to pause and I have to ask myself, man, it's so hard to try to live aloha when we are challenged in so many different ways. And I think that's where grace comes in, is that we are human, and we do have our own flaws. And I think when we are aware of them, then we're able to, with self-regulation and self-awareness and, self-reflection, we're able to own that part of us that sometimes we can feel embarrassed about. I always talk about a gracious anger, because I tell people I'm angry. I'm fucking angry all the time.
Sure.
You know, I'm angry all the time. And, we have every right to be angry right now. But if we come into the work with this uncontrolled, this untamed kind of anger, then what will happen is that we will end up becoming the very systems that we're wanting to dismantle. And we'll end up hurting people. And in our wake of justice, in our wake of activism, in our wake of all of this, we will find more people being hurt. And hurt people hurt people. And as long as we keep perpetuating that hurt, we're never going to get where we really want to be. So, it's like, yeah, be angry, but have some grace, especially if there are people who are still learning and understanding who we are, and understand that being human is complicated. So,
yeah, and there's something to be said for channeling and using it for good in a weird, twisty kind of way, that the anger that it cannot consume, or it can consume, but to try and not let it consume and to channel it forward. This is why the metaphor of Hawaii is so interesting to me, because it's got great wind and the trees move with the wind and do not break. It's got vast ocean. It's got flowing volcano of fire that is constantly refiguring itself and hardening and softening and hardening and burning, and the rains that come and wash everything in these giant deluge systems, which cleans it all again. It's quite interesting, really, that she exists as a embodiment, a breathing, living being in and of herself.
yes.
Separate by lots of islands, yet connected. It's fascinating, right? They said the Hawaii in general, everything that she represents is very it's powerful.
Yes, yes. And it's like, Susan, it's so, the way that you said it was so beautifully said, because that's exactly what Hawaii is. And yes, we are apart, but still connected. We destroy, but yet we still create. It's all of this. And I feel that we lose the depth and the beauty of the destruction and the creation, the grace and the anger, the fire and everything else that can coexist in this space simultaneously. And when we're able to embody that and see that, I think that is when we can really grow and transcend beyond everything that we have right here, right now. And if we do it with kuleana, kuleana is the responsibility, the stewardship, the mission of our life. It is our deep sacred responsibility, is kuleana. And same with creation and destruction. You can't have one without the other, right? You do it, and you do it with responsibility to extend, to expand for the next generations to come. And you do this by being in balance, understanding that they can coexist simultaneously with each other in harmony, in lukahi, so then that way you can have this deeper connection with everything else. When you can be in full connection with Aloha Akua, Aloha Aina, and Aloha Kanaka. And so, yeah, it is. You just made me realize and just made me think about how deep I am Hawaii, right? It exists within me. Exists within me. Yeah.
It's powerful.
I've been told before, because I speak in metaphors.
Same.
I speak in metaphors, and I'm always talking about love. I'm always talking about aloha. I'm always talking about, co-creating communities. I'm always talking about that people are always like, oh my gosh, Gerry, you're so woo-woo. And I'm like thinking, you know what? That's the problem with the world. Maybe we need a little bit more woo in our lives, because it's like that deep connection, that deep care for one another, being able to see another human being and genuinely caring for that individual, that's what's missing. And we don't have that. And it hurts to really see what is going on, especially for our marginalized communities. I was having a conversation with my husband, and I was telling him, I said, I don't want to live in this place of fear. I really don't. I said, but I carry my passport around. I carry my passport around because someone could be out there and all they see is this, without asking me questions, without knowing my story, without knowing who I am. Their bias, their ideas exist by what they see. So they look at me, and phenotypically, they already have a narrative about who I am. And if they react on that impulse they've been given and fed through all of the social medias and everything that's happening, I could have people at my door wanting to take me away. It is scary. And I have sons and I have grandchildren, and I worry about them as well too. And, it's like, I don't feel that anybody should have to live in this kind of place of such fear. And it hurts. It hurts my heart to see that and to know what is happening in our society. And I want to do all I can. And, it's like, I also know that if I walk in and I want to like change things, and I'm just like walking in with grenades and, sticks and ready to beat people up or whatever it is, I am going to be met with the same force or even more.
Sure.
And so, it's like, okay, well, we have energy, right? It's like the way that our words have energy, our words have power, our existence, our presence has energy. So how we show up is going to depend on the energy that we put forth. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to just I'm like my husband called me a Care Bear, the Love-A-Lot bear. Because he says you give a lot of love. You give a lot of love, and you really, really care for people. And I'm like, I do. I genuinely do. And if that is my superpower, then be it, right?
Sure, but you can have those two thoughts simultaneously. You can care for people and be full of rage.
Yes. Yes, you can. In fact, I presented at the Northwest Regional Equity Conference just last week. And I was talking about gracious anger. And, so I was sharing that anger and grace are not opposites, right? It's like, I was saying that they are the fuel and foundation. So hold the fire of righteous indignation without letting it burn our bridges. And then let grace guide our power so that our activism heals as fiercely as it disrupts. That's some hard thing to do, because we can get stuck in one or the other. And I've been there before, when I'm in this place of disruption and I just want to just burn the shit down. And then I ended up getting burned, right?
Right.
Then I look back and it's like, oh my gosh, I ended up hurting people as well too. And it's a lot.
Yeah. What is CO3?
Co-3 is for co-creating cohesive communities. So co-creating the three co's. When co-creating cohesive communities came out 15 years ago, came through a dream. It was a dream. Let me tell you really quick. So Auntie Palahipaki, she passed away she passed away a long time ago. But back in 1986, she went to legislature and she pretty much told legislature that the spirit of of aloha needs to be law, meaning that the way that people from Hawaii would conduct themselves would be in this place of aloha. And she took aloha and she broke it down acronymically. So akahai, kindness to be expressed with tenderness, lokahi, unity to be expressed with harmony, olu olu, agreeable to be expressed with pleasantness, ha'aha'a, humility to express with modesty, and ahunui, patience to be expressed with perseverance. She was at this conference. It was called Hawaii 2000, and this was back in 1970. They were talking about the state of Hawaii, and there was just a lot of tension because this was during the Vietnam War, and everyone was just like upset with each other, and there was just all these things going on. And she was in the back of the room, and she stood up and she started to talk about aloha. And she was like, the world will come to Hawaii in search for world peace because Hawaii has the key, and that key is aloha. And she talked about how aloha is about this love, this compassion, this empathy, this being able to, conduct ourselves in a way that is not going to, is going to cause any harm. And so, as I was going through, I was working on my bachelor's degree, I was like figuring out who I am and, what is my purpose in this world and where am I going to do, what am I doing with all of this stuff? Aloha came about, and it came to me in a dream because I started to realize that the conversations that we were having with each other, and I should say with myself, wasn't resulting to the outcomes that I really wanted. Back then, my husband and I, we were in this place of, I was in this place of decolonization. And I started to look at him, and he's a 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyed guy. And I started to look at him as the colonizer. And I started to tell him that he was occupying my space. And it's like, I would call him, the white guy and haole and all of these derogatory things that we actually slept in separate rooms for over a year as I was going through this process, right? I would say these things about him, and I pretty much, would tell him that, man, you are everything that I want to dismantle in this world. You are the representation of everything that is wrong in this world.
That's pretty heavy.
And it was heavy. It was
he
heavy.
Can't help how he was born either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as we were going through this, and we slept in separate rooms, it's like our grandson, who is he's 16 now, but he was only 8, was hearing all of this. I didn't know that he was hearing it, right? It's like I wasn't aware that he was off in another place, but he was hearing the words that his Jima was saying. Moana came out, and I was talking about my people, and that, it's like, I was telling him, like, Lyric, these are your ancestors. Your ancestors were warriors, and they traveled across the Pacific North, the Pacific. They understood the stars and the moon and the ocean, and they were in connection with everything. So he's like, wow, these are my people. And he's getting all excited. Mm-hmm. And so my husband is like flipping through HBO. He comes across Vikings.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the Vikings did pretty damn good with the same thing.
Comes across with Vikings. Exactly. And he starts talking about Vikings and everything the Vikings have done.
Yeah.
And so our grandson was like, Jima, if Moana's your people and I'm your grandson, then that makes Moana my people. And I was like, that's right. And then he goes, Papa, if Vikings are your people and I'm your grandson, then Vikings are my people. And I was like, no. But I was like, yes, it is. And so, he's 8. He goes, back to his parents. He comes back the next week or so. And all of a sudden, he's afraid of me. He doesn't want to hug me. He's very distant from me. Every time, it's like I go and hug him. He kind of like, I could feel his entire body stiffen up. And I would, so I asked him, I said, grandson, what's going on? What's happening? And he's really sad. And he goes, Jima, you say that Moana's my people because that's your people. And I'm like, yep. And he goes, and Viking is my people because it's Papa people. And I'm like, yes. And he goes, so Jima, which part of me do you not love?
Oh, from the mouths of babes.
Which part, which part of me do you not love? And it was at that moment when I realized that I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What am I doing? I cannot be asking my grandson to dissect himself because if we never had this conversation, that part of him he will hide. That part of him he will hate. And he will hate that part of himself because Jima does not love that part of him. And I'm like, no, I cannot do this. This is not aloha. This is not aloha. So in my dream, the guiding principles of aloha was born. And so A is to ask questions and inquire to avoid making unnecessary assumptions. Listen deeply to understand what is being said without any judgment. And if you're going to ask questions and you're going to listen, you need to observe, always to observe your body, observe the somatic response that is happening in yourself and what is happening with the other person that you are engaging with. And to always come to this place of being heart focused is the place where love and compassion and empathy and all of aloha resides. So that way we could adapt and acknowledge that we come from different places with different ideas, with different perspectives. And that when we are able to adapt our mind frame and the way that we think, we can learn more, which can expand our horizon, can expand our understanding of the world. And Aloha was born because my grandson, who was 8 years old at that time, asked me which part of me do I not love?
Powerful. The innocence of a child
Right.
who has not yet been taught to hate and is just starting to learn what that word even means.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And now he's 16 and oh my gosh, it's so amazing because we went to have lunch yesterday and he's talking about he wants to go back home, right? He's like, Jima, he goes, I want to go to Hawaii. And I was like, okay. I'm like, let's go. And he goes, I'm like, but it may be a while, before, because he plays soccer and he's in school. I said, he goes, let's just go to Hawaii for the weekend. And I'm like, you can't go to Hawaii just for the weekend. We're not going to fly 5.5 hours and stay for the weekend. And he's like, all right, Jima. He goes, it's okay. Cause you know what? Hawaii lives in me. And I looked at him. I'm like, what? Like, he's so proud. He is so proud of who he is. On his mom's side, his grandfather's from the Philippines. And so he's got that culture, that deep culture of being Filipino. And so it's like when he's in spaces, I can see on how he has learned how to navigate those spaces where he embodies everything that is around him because of who he is. And so he code switches.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. Yeah.
He code switches in a way that the people around him are just really, they see him and they're like, wow, he knows how to live his whole. And the only reason is because of the people that surrounds him. And that, it's like he's learned with us and we've learned with him. And we've been in challenging situations where we were able to aloha each other. We were able to ask these hard questions and truly listen with our whole selves, right? And just observe what is happening. And so the guiding principles of Aloha taught me how to engage in these complex conversations because I had to live it myself and it's not easy.
It's a process. We are in a continual growth until the day we
Yes.
take our last breath. And then in my belief system, it doesn't end there. So
Right.
how might people find you?
Well, they can find me at Co3 Consulting. So it's CO3 consulting.net is my website. Aloha Dr. G on Instagram is where they can find me. I'm on Facebook as well too, Dr. Gerry Ebalaroza-Tunnell on LinkedIn. So they can find me pretty much on the social medias and on my website and on your podcast.
That's right.
So yeah.
Gerry, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, I loved our conversation. I like that it got deep and philosophical rapidly. Those are my favorite kinds. So.
Oh, I know. Me too. I could have these conversations forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on Apple, iHeart, and Spotify podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.